Good afternoon, and welcome to Jeff and the Rabbi. Well, I'm glad we started because I got CNN breaking news here. CNN breaking news just in from Transgénero, California. A wealthy landowner was beginning the construction of a capitalistic mall when the underpaid Latino construction crew discovered an unquestionably authentic diary of Chief Squatting Bull of the Quebecan Indians, or Redskins, Native Peoples, or whatever. The diary clearly states that the land was originally the burial place of the Quebecan chieftains, and even relates the story of the original land purchase. And this just in, it has just been revealed that the Quebecans believed in neutering every male member of their tribe that showed any aggressive, dominant behavior. Not only is this probably why we've never heard of the clan due to their swift extinction, but also shows that they were an almost genderless people. This must have been the ultimate utopian perfect society. But wait, there's more. MSNBC added the byline, "This is definitely Trump's fault." When questioned what is Trump's fault, Mika Brzezinski responded, "Everything, just everything." But by the way, this, if you did not know, was fake news, but I'm sure you all figured that out when I mentioned CNN at the beginning. But the real point of this story is to ask all of you upright progressives in the audience, what would you do if it was true? Now, I obviously know the answer. You would join together in a mass march wearing nothing but a pink Indian headdress, protesting the stealing of the poor estrogen-rich Native Americans' land. I continue. This diary, by the way, would be all the proof that you would need to believe that this was 100% true. But wait, why are we so quick to take the side of the needy, neutered natives, but not of the hallowed, holy Hebrews? In chapter 23 of the first book of the most read manuscript ever composed, it states that Abraham purchased a burial plot in Hebron for his wife and future ancestors from a Hittite named Ephron. And Abraham even received the title deed to this property. For some reason, these same progressives that would jump to the sketchy claims of an ancient roving tribe of scalping savages would offhandedly deny the clear documentation in the Bible that over 2.3 billion people in the world hold as the gospel. It should be apparent to any clear and straightforward thinking person that the Jews have the historical and biblical claim to the land of Israel. Then why do the majority of the left in America and around the Western world deny that claim? They seem to take the side of every minority they can even concoct, but not the side of the Jews. Why not? I think I know why, but I think it would be safer and better for all of us if we let the rabbi answer this one.
Wow. Once again, my hat's off to you, and I know that's why you always look so tired on Mondays.
Yes.
You're up all night working on that.
All night long to come up with this beauty here.
But it's something. It's a work of art.
Yeah, it's a work. Absolutely.
They're going to be collected, by the way, and they're all going to be published in a book.
Absolutely.
These intros, it's wonderful.
I'll definitely make a lot of money on that one.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. You buy a whole bunch of them,
Yes.
you'll sell a lot. So anyway, so Abraham, you were right. You pointed out very, very appropriately that Abraham, the whole story in the beginning of the Torah portion called Chaye Sarah, it's in Genesis, talks about Abraham purchasing the cave of Machpelah in the city of Hebron so that he could bury his wife.
Right.
And subsequently that became the Jewish patriarchal burial plot, and later on Isaac and Rebekah were buried there, and so too Jacob and Leah.
Right.
Okay. Tradition has it that actually he wanted that particular plot because Adam and Eve were buried in that plot.
I've heard that. I don't know how
Adam and
many
Eve
do
were
that.
buried there, and that's why he really wanted that, because that's pretty special.
Good point.
You can be buried by the great grandparents Adam and Eve. That's pretty special.
Not bad.
But the question really is, so what? Why did the Torah go to great lengths to tell us? Not only does it tell us that he bought it, but the negotiations that surrounded it.
Paid full price and everything.
Yeah, how much, exactly how much he paid for it, who was the seller, exactly how they negotiated, where it was done, in front of whom, how was the transaction made, a lot of details. I mean, you know, if the Torah had told me that Abraham buried Sarah in Hebron, I would figure he bought a plot and he buried her, or he just buried her somewhere. Like, what's the deal? Like, why so much detail? Even to know exactly where they were sitting when they made the transaction for the plot, what's going on? So, this is very important. It is very important and very significant, and particularly this episode about buying the plot. Because if we go back a few chapters earlier, we know that Abraham was not living in Israel. Abraham was up in, first he was living in Ur Kasdim, which is all the way over in Iraq, basically, down in the Tigris-Euphrates Delta there. And his family left. He ran afoul of the authorities there. So his family left, and they migrated up the Euphrates River, and they ended up in, let's say, northern Syria, Lebanon there, Turkey-ish over there, in the city of Haran. Then God said to Abraham, go. And Abraham left with his wife, and they went marching off, and they ended up in Israel. When they got to Israel, God said, this is your land, I'm going to give it to you and your children and all that, you're going to inherit it, it's going to be your land. In the meantime, he didn't have any children, but he's told this is going to be your land. So it becomes all the more interesting to note that Abraham, although he was promised by God that this was his land, buys the burial plot from a guy named Ephron.
I mean, he was kind of powerful at the time. He could have taken it. He was pretty strong. He won a couple wars there.
And as a matter of fact, they offered it to him. As the story opens, he said he was mourning for Sarah, and he approaches the elders of the city, and they said, yeah, just, pick a plot anywhere you want.
Right.
You're a nice guy. We like you. They were very welcoming.
Right.
Bury it. And he said, no. I want to buy a plot. They said, no, just bury. He said, I want to buy. He said, show me Ephron the Hittite. I want to meet Ephron the Hittite. They introduced him to Ephron the Hittite. He says, I want to buy the plot. Ephron says, hey, what do you mean? I'll give you a plot. What's the big deal? It's just a cave. I got lots of caves. I don't know, he's a wealthy man and all that stuff. And in the end, Abraham ends up paying an extreme amount. It says 400 shekels of the international type, which were the large shekels. Extremely overpays for this burial plot. Why? The purpose of all this is to show that Abraham, even though it was promised to him, bought the land. Why did he buy the land? And he bought it in a public display of buying the land in front of all the assembled elders of the city, so that Abraham can say, I bought this land. You can't argue with me. It's mine. I bought it. Now, at the time, where were the Palestinians?
Well, I don't even know what that word meant at that time. I don't think it was.
Where were the Palestinians?
I don't think they were there.
So the Palestinians were still 30 some odd centuries, 30 centuries away from coming into existence.
Being called, to be made up into being there, right.
Yeah, so Abraham has already purchased the land. Purchased, we know the price, we know when, where, how the transaction was all made. This is 30 centuries. It's a long time.
And this is not just documented into some thing that somebody dug. Hey, look, I see some ancient thing. This is as I mentioned there, a book that Christians, Jews, Muslims, and not just the Christians and Jews alone, 2.3 billion of them read this book, but the Muslims read this book as well, which is another 2.6 billion people.
Right. Even if you were to late date the Torah.
Right.
Let's say you late date it. Not like me, I'm a traditionalist. I say the Torah was a lot older, but there are, let's say, scholars.
Okay.
Let's say there are secular scholars, historians, archaeologists, and so on and so forth, and they much later date the Torah. Even if you late date the Torah, okay, so now you're down to 20 centuries. 20 centuries.
It's still a pretty good chunk of time, I think.
I mean, okay, it's a long time. So when we're talking about laying claim to a land, so there is a historic claim. Now you could say, go the other direction, you could say, listen, you might have this historic claim, but you guys were not really around, you Jews. You were not really around for such a long time. In the meantime, we've moved in and we've settled down, and you guys are not really here.
Well, so there's a lot of history that kind of will argue that as well, and digging up archaeology that would kind of argue that as well.
Now that would go back to your Indian tribe, because
Yes.
if you say, well, listen, guys,
Good point.
I mean, listen, I know once upon a time that the Seminoles, like, were in Florida.
Not the Fetching Indians were not
Right,
there.
yeah, I'm not sure about them. I know about some fetching, but I don't know.
Okay,
So,
there.
yeah, you're there, but you haven't been around there for some centuries, so you really have no. Or you dig up one of these ancestral burial sites, and you say, well, who does that belong to? And someone says they can somehow lay claim, well, that was my ancestors. Say, yeah, but you haven't really been here or been using this for centuries. We do try to respect ancestral claims. So maybe you'll say, well, the Jews haven't been around. Well, the question really is, where have the Jews been in the meantime? The truth is, had the world left the Jews alone, maybe they would have moved somewhere else and then not bothered to ever go back. And that would have been pretty good for the Palestinians. The problem is, however, wherever the Jews went, everybody was picking on
Yeah,
them.
we tend to get kicked out of a lot of good places.
And they just never could find anywhere else to settle down to. And that made, as the centuries wore on and on and on, that made the ancestral homeland attachment actually stronger. Because every time they tried to settle down in some other country, they got booted out of there.
Right.
So after a while, they started to realize, like, hey, this isn't going to work trying to find some other place to go. Obviously, the only place we got to go is to where we originally were.
So, like when you hear people about the late Helen Thomas, a lot of people say, go back to Poland.
Right, go back to
whatever.
Poland, yeah.
That's not our ancestral home.
The truth is, had the Polish people been a little bit nicer to the Jews, maybe the Jews would have forgotten about their ancestral homeland. But the Polish people, as well as every other people all around the globe, persist on reminding the Jews that Poland is not their homeland. Neither is Spain, neither is Germany, neither is Yemen, neither is anywhere else. So what is the Jew left to conclude? This story of Abraham and Israel becomes ever and ever stronger and a greater attachment.
Interesting. I mean, but I guess the question is, and we can get back to these actions, then why is the denial of this so strong in the rest? I mean, I'm not just obviously from whoever the Palestinian people are, the Arabs, but from the West, from the left in the West.
Right. So they really, really, really don't want to let the Jews go back and settle down. Now, why not? Why not? You would think that a lot of people would say, good, you know what? Why don't you y'all, just go back there?
I actually had to, by the way, I did tell you that I had someone say that once to me. It was during the Olympics in Atlanta. Just thought you reminded me that the guy was mad. He was one of the guys building a home we were building, and he said, something was in the paper where someone from Israel, or no, some Jewish people complained about the Olympics. He said they all just need to go back to Israel. So I didn't even heard that before. Go back to Israel. I mean, that's great. I should talk to everybody.
Right. I mean, maybe if they would, that would be the perfect solution.
Right.
The perfect solution would be that the world should get together and the world should say, you know what?
Enough of you guys.
All you Jews, just go back to Israel and you'll do your Israel thing.
Stop making movies over here.
Right.
Stop doing
Stop
banking.
doing all this
Go
stuff.
to
And you're
Israel.
taking over our countries and you're telling us how to do it. Get out of here. Go back to Israel. You would think that would be a great solution. But it turns out that when the Jews say they want to do that, they say, no, you can't have that because you're taking away the land from the Palestinians or whoever it is. So they don't want to give them that either.
Amazing.
It starts to sound like they don't want us there, but they don't want us here. They don't want us anywhere.
I kind of got to the point where I saying I think I know the real answer, but maybe you would help us out.
So what's going on? What's going on? Why don't they want us anywhere? They don't. They certainly don't like us here, but they don't like us over there. What's going on? So I believe that everybody intuits. This goes back to a story that we're going to be reading about coming up in the next few weeks. there's Jacob and there's Esau, these two brothers.
Yeah.
And when Israel, the nation, the people, become settled in Israel, the land, the place, then they become a very, very potent force in the world. Almost, at least biblically described, unstoppable force in the world. Not that they're going to conquer the world, but they are going to dominate the world in a certain sense, in that they are going to exert a tremendous amount of influence on the world culture and world attitude and world conduct, because this combo of Israel the people in Israel the land is very, very potent. And there are forces in the world that really don't want to see that happen.
No, definitely not. And isn't it true also that when Israel's up, or when Jacob is up,
Right.
Esau is down, and
Right.
vice versa? So that kind of, not just are the Jews rising, and I think probably with that moral clarity that people don't want to be that clear in the world comes out, it hurts the rest of the world.
Now, you would think that, let's say you're some guy like Hitler, may his name be blotted out. You would think if you really want to keep the Jews from exerting world power, then at least biblically what you should do is you should be very hospitable to them in Germany.
Right.
And then they'd all say, hey, we like it here in Germany. Why do we want to go back to like a little strip of Middle East? It's hot, there's no water. Like, we like it in Germany, we'll just settle down here. And a lot of Jews would gladly forget about their ancestral homeland and just settle down.
For some reason, I think Hitler and the guys might have missed that parsha.
They missed it. They totally missed it. They blew it because you know what they did? They made it so inhospitable for the Jews that they had to go back to their homeland. And that's what we saw within a few years after the end of the Second World War. The Jews are going back to Israel. And you know what? Everyone in the world, feeling so guilty, said, yeah, we got to give them a place and
For a little bit.
Yeah.
That guilt didn't last long.
We're off, soon enough.
Right.
But in the immediate
Right.
aftermath of the war comes the state of Israel. So actually, if anything, the Jewish people truly came to greater prominence after having 6 million people killed
True.
than they were before.
Kind of scary, but
It
it's true.
was a bad move. Had he not killed the 6 million, the Jews would have just seemed to continue along their merry way, assimilating, identifying with their local cultures, just sort of, settling in.
Talking about getting a
Didn't
kick in the
happen.
butt to kind of move yourself forward. That was a pretty tough
Amazing.
one, but yeah.
Amazing, and the whole world. It really shook up the whole world. And then we have all of a sudden this return of the Jews to Israel. That creates the new issue and the new arguments and all that about who has the claim to the land. And at that point, here comes the biblical argument once again. And the biblical argument is very hard to refute because it's the oldest argument around, regardless of when you date the Torah to. I might date it older than other people do, but even taking the latest possible date of the Torah, the claim to Israel
Right.
is about the oldest claim that exists on the planet.
Well, and what's interesting about that, and the reason I've been thinking about my son, like it was mentioned to you, is doing a speech on a topic very similar to this, and when we come into the conclusion, I was trying to tell him, listen, your conclusion should be, listen, sometimes in debates, there are two sides of debates, and there always are, but sometimes there is right and there is wrong. And in this issue right here, there's right and wrong, and you would think the claim of right is so clear here, especially for the left, like in America. We've got one group of people, not only is this historical claim, it's kind of hard to argue that. Not only is it even the local history, from last 100 years, from the Balfour Declaration on, it's hard to argue. But it's even hard to argue on what's right and what's wrong. You look at a group of people that it clearly, especially from the left, progressive society looks at one group of people, the only place in this part of the world where they accept gays, they accept women as equals, they don't put bombs into their or missiles in the schoolhouses and their playgrounds,
right,
so that the children get killed. And I wonder, and I understand your answer right there, but it has to be a little bit more than that. How could the left, the progressive left, who, facetiously we talked about here in the intro, that would say, listen, if any Indian claimed, whatever you call them, claimed ownership, they wouldn't even have to show documentation. you Europeans, you're out. This is them. We're going
Right.
to march. We're going to put on our little headdresses, and we're going to like on Facebook as much as we can. How can they be on the absolute wrong side of what they claim to believe in the world when it comes to Israel?
Right. So that is, like I said, that there is this claim and this destiny that the Jewish people have. And if the Jewish people, what biblically we believe, that everybody intuits, if the Jewish people get reunited with their homeland, they are going to be an extremely potent force.
You think it's that deep down inside?
Everyone gets that. Yes.
The liberal Jewish woman with 3 names that lives out in California. I guess she's getting so many husbands,
Right.
and she wants to make sure her name stays in there.
Hyphens.
Hyphen.
Yeah.
You're saying that she's deep down, and somehow that's coming out. It's not anything else.
Yes. But I would also say, and this is very true, that the Jewish people themselves are not really comfortable with this. Like
Obviously
a good proof is that Israel, as it constituted today, is a contradiction. Israel is a Jewish state, but it's also a democracy. Now,
Right.
I don't know how you can be a democracy and be a Jewish state, because if a democracy votes, let's say it would be not a majority of non-Jews, or the democracy would vote not to be Jewish. So how do you have a Jewish state that would be democratically not Jewish?
Yeah, that's a good
So
point.
it's kind of a contradiction in terms
Especially since no 2 Jews have ever agreed on anything in the history of the
Right.
earth. But yeah.
So the Jews themselves don't really seem to be very comfortable in figuring out exactly. They all know it's their homeland and it's a Jewish state. On the other hand, they very much want it to be a democracy, and those two things don't always work out.
Well, that's true. That's true. I mean,
So they can't give equal rights and benefits to everyone because it's a Jewish state. On the other hand, as a democracy, they have to recognize everyone equally. Well, what are you going to do? It becomes a problem. So the Jews themselves are having a hard time figuring out what Israel really is. And, it's a new endeavor. It's only about 70 years old, going to be 70 years old coming up in this coming spring. And, as far as history goes, it's a new thing, especially after having been a 2,000-year hiatus. It takes a while to figure itself out, but it will sort itself out as time goes on.
But I mean, it's interesting, and it's interesting because you said, I think you're right. A lot of the Jews have a tough time with this as well. Seems to be the Christians seem to be more on the side of who's the Jews owning the land than anybody else.
That's right.
So I mean,
That's right. Christians are flooding to Israel right now. Christian tourism in Israel is number one. Yeah.
so but the bottom line, at least I think your discussion of what happened at Hebron alone, in spite of many other arguments out there, kind of makes it difficult for anyone who, even on obviously the left, who would, as we said, would jump to this conclusion with a lot less evidence. It's hard to see how anyone can come to the conclusion that this land belongs to anybody else but the Jews.
See, Avram was not relying exclusively on the promise.
Right.
He went out and did a public transaction and way overpaid so that everyone would know crystal clear. He did it publicly, witnesses and all that, so that everyone would know. And when you buy a burial place is really, like you're saying, this is where I am. This is my
Generations will be
This
here.
is where I'm putting my own wife and where I plan to be buried and where I want my kids to come back to. That's a big deal.
It is. Well, so for me, I'm kind of more of a black and white kind of guy. You got me. You sold me. I believe it, and I like to debate, but there's some things in the world, are kind of black and white to me. This one's black and white.
I don't know if it's much of a debate, but the debate seems to rage on. I'm not sure exactly what the debate is all about.
Right? So it's clear to me. It should be clear to you. But hey, this is a good episode. I enjoyed it. I learned a lot here too. All right, good. Well, we'll be back next week with another episode of Jeff and the Rabbi.